From glacial lakes that glow like gemstones to forests where ancient trees whisper in the wind, this land stretches wide with contrasts. Here, snow-capped mountains give way to golden plains, and waterfalls thunder just hours from quiet fishing villages. Cities rise beside rivers shaped by time, while wildlife still roams free across open tundra. It's a place where nature writes the headlines, but history, culture, and community fill in every line. Welcome to Canada, where every journey tells a deeper story. In this series, we'll explore icy fjords and storm-swept coastlines, wander through indigenous homelands, stroll city streets lined with stone and steel, and hike into high alpine passes. From rainforest trails in the west to grand urban centers in the east, every destination adds a different texture to the map. Before continuing the video, we have a quiz for you. Arrange the following letters to name one of Canada's most famous natural wonders. We have a hint. Located on the border between Canada and the United States, this place is one of the most famous waterfalls in the world, where millions of gallons of water pour down every minute. Please comment your answer below this video. Now the real journey begins. Tucked deep in the Canadian Rockies, Banff National Park stands as a vast expanse of wilderness where rugged peaks, turquoise lakes, and alpine meadows stretch across the landscape. Located in Alberta, and established in 1885, it holds the distinction of being Canada's first national park and the third oldest in the world. What began as a small reserve centered around natural hot springs has since grown into one of the country's most iconic destinations, drawing millions of visitors each year. The scenery in Banff is nothing short of breathtaking. Towering mountains dominate the skyline, carved by ancient glaciers and framed by dense evergreen forests. Between them, valleys open to reveal glacial lakes, the most famous of which is Lake Louise, known for its unreal shade of blue. Nearby, Moraine Lake offers equally dramatic views, especially in early summer when melting snow feeds its waters. Whether it's the shifting light on the mountaintops at dawn or the mirror-like stillness of a lake at dusk, the park offers countless moments of natural drama. Beyond its striking vistas, Banff is a landscape steeped in geological history. The Rocky Mountains that define the region formed over tens of millions of years, shaped by tectonic collisions and relentless erosion. Fossil beds embedded in the surrounding rock bear witness to ancient marine life that once thrived here, long before the mountains themselves rose from the Earth's crust. Along a distant edge of the Pacific, where dense rainforest tumbles into open sea and tides shape the rhythm of life, there exists a place unlike anywhere else in Canada. Tofino, a small town tucked on the rugged west coast of Vancouver Island, is where the wildness of nature meets quiet human presence. Long before any visitors arrived, this land was home to the Ucluelet First Nation, part of the Nucha people. For thousands of years, they lived along these shores, thriving in a resource-rich environment that provided salmon, shellfish, cedar, and more. Today, their presence remains central to Tofino's identity, visible in local totem poles, carvings, community-led cultural tours, and protected heritage sites throughout the region. The geography of the area is striking. On one side lies Clayoquot Sound, a network of islands, inlets, and unspoiled rainforest, designated as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. On the other, endless beaches stretch along the Pacific, many of them backed by towering spruce and cedar forests. Tofino also played a key role in Canadian environmental history. In the 1990s, the nearby Clayoquot Sound became the focus of one of the country's largest environmental protests, as activists and indigenous groups joined forces to oppose clear-cut logging. The movement sparked national conversations around conservation, indigenous rights, and sustainable development. Today, the area's protected status reflects both the fragility of the ecosystem and the power of grassroots resistance. Set along the Icefields Parkway, Peyto Lake's instantly recognizable by its vivid turquoise color and distinct wolf head shape when viewed from above. The lake is fed by meltwater from the nearby Peyto Glacier, and its intense hue comes from fine rock particles, called glacial flour, suspended in the water. These sediments scatter sunlight in a way that gives the lake its famous opaque blue tone, a visual effect that shifts subtly depending on the season, time of day, and weather. The lake lies within the territory of the Stoney Nakoda people, who have long traveled through these valleys for hunting, trading, and spiritual practices. Though much of the region was redefined through the lens of colonial mapping and tourism in the 20th century, Peyto Lake and the surrounding peaks hold older names, deeper meanings, and connections that continue to this day. Indigenous stories describe these mountains as living entities, shaped by ancestors and guarded by spirits that still linger in the high passes. The name Peyto itself comes from Bill Peyto, an English trapper, guide, and one of Banff's early park wardens. Known for his rugged independence and fierce protection of the wilderness, Peyto was a central figure in the early conservation movement of the Rockies. His legacy lives on not only in the lake's name, but also in the continuing effort to balance human presence with ecological preservation. If you visited this place, comment number 5. If not, comment number 0. Where seawater laps against forested shores and cedar-scented trails wind beneath towering trees, a surprising pocket of wilderness thrives at the edge of one of Canada's busiest cities. This is Stanley Park, a 400-hectare green sanctuary that borders downtown Vancouver, offering a rare blend of urban energy and coastal calm. Established in 1888, Stanley Park is Vancouver's oldest and most famous public park. but its significance predates that date by millennia. For thousands of years, the area was home to the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, who lived in villages along the shoreline and harvested from its rich marine and forest ecosystems. The land now called Stanley Park holds deep cultural and spiritual meaning for these communities, and their presence is still visible today through totem poles, art installations, and ongoing stewardship partnerships with the city. The park itself occupies a peninsula that juts into Burrard Inlet and English Bay, surrounded by water on three sides. Unlike many urban parks, which are manicured and constructed, this one retains much of its natural coastal rainforest. One of the most iconic features of Stanley Park is the seawall, a nearly 10-kilometer paved path that traces the perimeter of the peninsula. Originally built as a protective barrier against erosion, the seawall has become a beloved route for walkers, cyclists, and joggers. Stanley Park's creation as a public space was closely tied to Vancouver's early development. Named after Lord Stanley, the Governor-General of Canada at the time, the park was envisioned as a place where citizens could enjoy recreation and nature together. Surrounded by jagged peaks and evergreen forests, where alpine air carries the sound of wind through pine branches and snow melt trickles down rocky slopes, lies a mountain town built on adventure. Whistler, located just 2 hours north of Vancouver in British Columbia's Coast Mountains, has grown from a quiet valley into one of North America's premier year-round destinations. Long before ski lifts and lodges shaped the area's modern image, this land was home to the Squamish and Lil'wat nations, who hunted, fished, and gathered in the valley for generations. Their knowledge of the mountains, rivers, and seasons formed a deep relationship with the landscape that continues to this day. The Squamish Lil'wat Cultural Center, located in Whistler Village, honors these histories and invites visitors to learn about the art, language, and traditions rooted in the land. The area gained international prominence in 2010 when it co-hosted the Winter Olympic Games with Vancouver. The event showcased not only Whistler's athletic venues and natural beauty, but also its hospitality and community spirit. Many of the Olympic sites remain in use today, integrated into the town's fabric for both sport and recreation. Though renowned for its skiing and snowboarding, Whistler is far from a one-season town. When the snow melts, the mountains transform into a playground for hiking, mountain biking, climbing, and alpine sightseeing. Okanagan Valley, a sun-drenched region in southern British Columbia, where agriculture, landscape, and local culture have shaped one of Canada's most distinctive inland destinations. Defined by Okanagan Lake, the valley is known for its long, dry summers, mild winters, and wide skies. It's a land shaped by glacial activity and rain-shadow geography, conditions that have created a fertile ribbon of land ideal for agriculture, viticulture, and relaxed living. But the story of this place runs much deeper than its scenery. For thousands of years, the valley has been home to the Syilx Okanagan Nation, whose connection to the land is not only historical, but spiritual. The lake, mountains, and rivers are central to their oral histories, teachings, and survival. Their knowledge of traditional land use, cultivation of roots, fishing in clear streams, fire-based landscape management predates colonial agriculture by millennia. Today, Syilx communities remain active in cultural revitalization, land stewardship, and education efforts across the region. The arrival of European settlers in the 19th century brought dramatic change. Fur traders, ranchers, and eventually orchardists saw the Okanagan as an agricultural frontier. In recent decades, however, the Okanagan has evolved again, this time into the heart of British Columbia's wine country. With over 200 wineries scattered across the valley, it's become one of the most important and celebrated wine regions in Canada. Tucked in the Bow Valley, just outside the eastern gates of Banff National Park, Canmore is a former mining town turned mountain retreat that offers all the alpine beauty of the Rockies with a quieter, more local rhythm. Surrounded by towering limestone peaks, glacial rivers, and forests of spruce and fir, it's a place where nature frames daily life and mountain culture runs deep. While it now welcomes hikers, artists, and weekend adventurers, Canmore's roots trace back to coal. The town was founded in the late 1800s when the Canadian Pacific Railway arrived, and for nearly a century, it functioned as a working-class mining hub. Long before coal shaped the economy, the region was known to the Stoney Nakoda First Nation, who hunted and camped in the Bow Valley for generations. The surrounding mountains feature in traditional stories and carry spiritual meaning. Today, efforts to reconnect with and honor this Indigenous heritage are visible in educational programs, signage, and collaborations that recognize Canmore's deeper past. Unlike nearby Banff, which draws large crowds and tour buses, Canmore has retained a more relaxed, community-oriented feel. The town has become a magnet for creatives, athletes, and remote workers drawn to the combination of natural beauty and small-town ease. Trails begin practically at the town's edge, leading to alpine lakes, rocky ridges, and hidden valleys. In summer, hikers head to mountaintop for panoramic views and turquoise waters. Cyclists wind through forest paths or challenge themselves in steep climbs, while paddlers glide down the river. Winnipeg, the capital of Manitoba, sits at the confluence of the Red and Assiniboine rivers, a site known for over 6,000 years as a gathering place for Indigenous peoples across the plains. The area's strategic location made it a natural meeting point for early trade networks well before Europeans arrived. For the Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Métis peoples, the land around the Forks, now a National Historic Site, offered both natural abundance and cultural exchange. European settlement began in the early 18th century with fur traders and later settlers drawn by the promise of agriculture. In 1812, the Red River Settlement was founded, and by the late 19th century, Winnipeg had transformed into a major railway hub. The city became known as the Gateway to the West, a crucial stop between eastern Canada and the expanding frontier. During this time, its population boomed, buildings soared, and grand banks and warehouses rose, many of which still line the Exchange District, a beautifully preserved slice of turn-of-the-century urban architecture. Winnipeg's past, however, has not always been easy. The city was the site of the famous Winnipeg General Strike of 1919, one of the largest and most influential labor actions in Canadian history. Workers shut down the city for 6 weeks to demand fair wages and better conditions, and their protest became a turning point for the Canadian labor movement. The legacy of that struggle remains visible, both in public memory and in the city's ongoing conversations around social justice and inclusion. Famous for its trio of turquoise alpine lakes stacked along a steep glacial trail, Joffre Lakes is one of British Columbia's most photographed wilderness destinations. Set within the Coast Mountains near Pemberton, this backcountry park is a showcase of raw elevation, bright mineral waters, and dense evergreen forest, all compressed into a hike that feels both dramatic and accessible. The park lies within the traditional territory of the Nquatqua and Lilwat First Nations, who have inhabited the region for thousands of years. Long before hikers arrived with backpacks and camera phones, these lands were traversed for hunting, fishing, and gathering. The lakes, today named simply Lower, Middle, and Upper Joffre, were once landmarks along ancient travel routes that connected mountain valleys and seasonal encampments. The lake's intense color is no illusion. Like many glacial-fed lakes, their hue comes from rock flour, fine particles ground down by moving ice, suspended in the meltwater. These particles reflect sunlight in a way that gives the lakes their iconic milky blue appearance, especially vivid on clear summer days. Because of the elevation gain, each lake also sits in its own distinct microclimate, offering not just a visual journey, but also subtle shifts in vegetation, temperature, and sound. Though hiking is the primary activity here, the lakes are also a draw for photographers, wildlife observers, and backcountry campers. Towering granite cliffs, coastal rainforest, and river valleys shaped by glaciers. This is the dramatic geography that defines Squamish. Known for its world-class climbing, wild landscapes, and strong indigenous heritage, Squamish has quietly evolved from a logging town into a vibrant center for outdoor culture and ecological awareness. The town sits at the northern end of Howe Sound, a deep fjord carved during the last ice age, and now one of the southernmost inlets along the Pacific coast of North America. This meeting of ocean and mountain creates a landscape that feels at once expansive and enclosed, where tides rise beneath cliffs and snow-capped peaks rise above moss-draped trees. In the 20th century, the town's economy was driven largely by forestry and transportation. Over time, as resource industries declined, Squamish began to attract climbers, hikers, and nature seekers drawn to the vertical stone and unspoiled terrain. What was once a quiet industrial town gradually transformed into a destination known internationally for adventure sports and environmental values. Perhaps the most recognizable natural feature here is the Squamish Chief, a massive granite monolith that rises over 700 meters above the town. The hiking trail to its summit is steep and rewarding, offering panoramic views of Howe Sound and the surrounding coast mountains. Outdoor recreation remains central to daily life. Kiteboarders take to the winds near the estuary. Mountain bikers carve through forested trails, and backcountry skiers explore the snowfields in winter. Suspended high in the alpine wilderness and colored by glacial minerals, this turquoise lake is a crown jewel of British Columbia's backcountry. Garibaldi Lake, located just south of Whistler within Garibaldi Provincial Park, is renowned for its surreal beauty. Ringed by snow-capped peaks, ancient lava flows, and pristine subalpine meadows. At over 1,400 meters in elevation, the lake occupies a basin formed by volcanic activity during the last ice age. It is dammed naturally by a lava flow known as the Barrier, a striking wall of solidified basalt that blocks the lake's outflow and lends the landscape a unique geological character. Though it appears still and calm, the lake is part of a dynamic environment shaped by fire, ice, and shifting earth. The traditional territory of the Squamish and Lilwat First Nations, this area was known and traveled long before it became a park. Oral histories speak of hunting routes, seasonal camps, and spiritual sites that stretch through the surrounding mountains. Though much of this land is now administered as a provincial park, efforts to include Indigenous knowledge and stewardship practices are ongoing. The names and stories connected to this landscape remind visitors that Garibaldi is more than a destination. It is part of a much older living system. Garibaldi Lake leaves its mark not only through beauty, but through scale, silence, and story. Whether viewed from its rocky shore or from the high ridges above, it is a landscape that humbles and inspires. Cobblestone streets, brick facades, and the slow hiss of a steam-powered clock. This is the sound and texture of Vancouver's oldest neighborhood. Gastown, located on the city's downtown waterfront, is where Vancouver began. A former saloon settlement turned historic district that still pulses with creative energy, layered stories, and urban charm. The neighborhood takes its name from Gassy Jack Dayton, a Yorkshire-born seaman and bar owner who arrived in 1867 with a barrel of whiskey and an idea. He built a tavern near the Burrard Inlet, and from that simple structure, a community formed. First came loggers, sailors, and factory workers, then merchants and settlers. Though often romanticized, Gastown's origins reflect the city's rough frontier roots, shaped by trade, migration, and ambition. Much of the original town site was destroyed by fire in 1886, but it rose quickly from the ashes. By the early 20th century, Gastown had become a bustling commercial hub filled with warehouses, hotels, and steam-heated brick buildings that catered to Vancouver's growing port economy. Walking through Gastown today, the past is impossible to miss. Iron street lamps, exposed timber beams, and narrow alleys evoke the neighborhood's 19th century layout. A defining landmark here is the Gastown steam clock, built in 1977 as part of a revitalization effort to preserve the area's historic integrity. Though not truly Victorian, the clock has become an emblem of the neighborhood, drawing visitors each hour to watch it whistle, chime, and release puffs of steam. Known for its power rather than height, this thundering cascade carves through ancient rock with relentless force. Athabasca Falls is one of the most dramatic and accessible waterfalls in the Canadian Rockies. Renowned not just for its volume, but for the way it showcases the raw, erosive energy of water against stone. Fed by the Athabasca River, which begins at the Columbia ice field and winds its way northward, the falls drop only 23 meters, but they do so through a narrow gorge of layered limestone. The result is a concentrated rush that creates a constant roar, a cooling mist, and a striking geological display of potholes, polished walls, and sculpted overhangs. Even during dry seasons, the falls remain vigorous, thanks to the year-round meltwater from the Columbia Glacier. The name Athabasca comes from the Cree word meaning where there are reeds, a reference to the river's wider, marshier sections downstream. Long before roadways and rail lines reached this part of Alberta, Indigenous peoples used the river as a transportation corridor, traveling by canoe and portage across vast distances. The Athabasca River was later adopted by fur traders in the 18th and 19th centuries as part of a major route through the Canadian interior. Today, it's recognized as a Canadian heritage river, reflecting both its ecological and cultural significance. The falls sit just off the Icefields Parkway, a highway often described as one of the most scenic in the world. Scattered like stepping stones between Vancouver Island and the British Columbia mainland, these islands are known for their quiet forests, rocky shorelines, and creative, slow-paced communities. The Gulf Islands, a group of more than 200 islands and islets in the Salish Sea, offer a coastal landscape shaped by ocean rhythms and a rich tapestry of human and ecological history. The best known of these islands are just a ferry ride away from urban centers, but they feel worlds apart. Each island has its own rhythm and identity, but all share a sense of place deeply tied to the land and sea. This region has been home to Coast Salish peoples for thousands of years. Today, indigenous artists and communities continue to contribute to the island's culture through carving, weaving, and storytelling. Despite their proximity to major population centers, the islands have remained relatively undeveloped. Strict land use policies, limited ferry capacity, and a strong sense of community stewardship have preserved the character of these places. Hiking trails lead through mossy forests and arbutus groves. Kayakers explore sea caves and sheltered bays. Geologically, the islands were shaped by tectonic uplift and glacial retreat, leaving behind rolling ridgelines and sandstone cliffs that seem to rise suddenly from the sea. At low tide, tidal flats and kelp beds reveal a rich intertidal ecosystem. Towering waterfalls, fossil-filled cliffs, and emerald lakes set against jagged peaks. This is what defines Yoho National Park, one of the lesser-known but most geologically fascinating corners of the Canadian Rockies. Located in southeastern British Columbia, Yoho may sit in the shadow of its more famous neighbor, but it offers a wilder, more introspective experience of the mountains. The word Yoho comes from a Cree expression of awe and wonder, and the name fits. Here, tectonic forces, glaciers, and erosion have sculpted a landscape that doubles as an open-air textbook on Earth's history. Towering cliffs expose ancient seabeds, and high above the valley floors, you'll find limestone layers rich with fossilized marine life from more than 500 million years ago. The park is part of the larger Canadian Rocky Mountain Park's UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized not just for its beauty, but for the Burgess Shale fossil beds, among the most significant paleontological sites in the world. Yet Yoho's appeal goes beyond its geology. Water shapes the park's identity just as profoundly. Athabasca Falls, one of the highest waterfalls in Canada at 373 meters, cascades down a cliff face in a free-falling ribbon of mist. In summer, the roar of the falls echoes through the valley, fed by the meltwaters of the Daly Glacier. Stretching along British Columbia's remote central coast, this is one of the largest remaining temperate rainforests on Earth. The Great Bear Rainforest is not only a biodiversity hotspot, but also a living cultural landscape where indigenous nations have stewarded land and sea for millennia. Covering more than 6.4 million hectares, this forest is part of the Pacific Temperate Rainforest, a rare biome that runs from Northern California to Alaska. But the Great Bear stands apart for its size, intactness, and conservation success. Here, grizzlies, black bears, and the elusive white-furred Kermode bear, often called the spirit bear, move through a world shaped by water and time. In 2016, a historic accord was reached between the British Columbia government, First Nations, industry representatives, and conservation groups. The agreement protects 85% of the forest from industrial logging and supports ecosystem-based management in the remaining areas. It is now cited globally as a model for collaborative environmental governance. Ecologically, the region is astonishingly rich. The rivers are arteries of life, supporting 5 species of Pacific salmon that nourish not only the people and predators of the forest, but the forest itself. As salmon decompose after spawning, they return vital nutrients to the soil, feeding trees and linking ocean to canopy in a cycle of renewal. The rainforest's plant life is no less impressive. Western red cedar and Sitka spruce reach ages of 800 years or more. Kananaskis, often referred to simply as K-Country, is a vast region of provincial parks, recreation areas, and protected lands just west of Calgary, where rugged peaks, glacial valleys, and mirror-like lakes create a landscape that's both raw and welcoming. Encompassing more than 4,000 square kilometers, Kananaskis country includes several provincial parks, such as Peter Lougheed, Spray Valley, and Bow Valley. The terrain ranges from subalpine meadows to jagged summits, with rivers and trails weaving through every elevation. It's a place that invites exploration without the congestion often found in more well-known national parks. The name Kananaskis is believed to derive from a Cree word, possibly referring to a place of meeting or open land. What distinguishes Kananaskis from nearby parks is its sense of openness. Vast trail networks allow hikers, bikers, and skiers to access everything from family-friendly paths to backcountry ridgelines. Rawson Lake, Ptarmigan Cirque, and Barrier Lake are just a few of the scenic spots that can be reached within a day's effort. Despite its accessibility, Kananaskis offers a surprising sense of solitude. Its large size and decentralized infrastructure mean that visitors can quickly escape into silence. In recent years, the province introduced a Kananaskis Conservation Pass with revenue directed toward trail maintenance, conservation staffing, and visitor education. While some have debated the fee, the funding supports the infrastructure needed to sustain the area's popularity, especially as outdoor tourism continues to grow post-pandemic. Fringed by rugged coastline and wrapped in misty rainforest, this small fishing town offers a quieter, wilder version of Canada's Pacific Edge. Ucluelet, located on the west coast of Vancouver Island, is a place where the ocean shapes everything, from weather and wildlife to community rhythm and local identity. For thousands of years, this coastline has supported indigenous communities who fished, gathered, and lived in close connection with the ocean's tides and temperaments. Their cultural presence is still strong today, visible in language revitalization efforts, carving programs, and joint land stewardship throughout the region. While often mentioned in the same breath as its more tourist-heavy neighbor, Tofino, Ucluelet, has developed its own quiet identity. It's more about rocky headlands than sandy beaches, more working harbor than surf town. The mood here is saltier, slower, and more grounded in the realities of ocean life. Fishing boats still come and go with the tide, and the weather remains a daily conversation. Fog, wind, and waves, reminding visitors that this is no postcard coast, but a living edge. Historically, Ucluelet's economy was built on fishing and logging, industries that have shaped both the landscape and the community. In the late 20th century, as resource extraction slowed and tourism grew, the town began redefining itself. But it has done so carefully, with a strong emphasis on conservation, local culture, and maintaining a sense of place. With turquoise waters backed by towering peaks and a glacier perched like a crown above, Lake Louise has become one of the most iconic images of the Canadian Rockies. Fed by meltwater from the Victoria Glacier, the lake owes its vibrant color to fine rock flour suspended in the water, particles ground by glacial movement that scatter light in milky, luminous blue-green hues. The effect is most intense in midsummer, when runoff is at its peak and the sun illuminates the mineral-rich surface. Framed by Mount Victoria and steep forested slopes, the lake reflects the changing seasons with clarity and grace. Known as Ho-Run-Nam-Nay, or Lake of the Little Fishes, by the Stoney Nakoda, the lake was one stop among many in a landscape of hunting trails, sacred sites, and trade routes. Lake Louise's transformation into a travel destination began in the late 1800s, when surveyors for the Canadian Pacific Railway arrived in the Bow Valley. Recognizing the lake's potential as a scenic highlight, the railway company built a small cabin for visitors, followed by the first version of the Chateau Lake Louise in 1890. Tourism at Lake Louise has always been tied to the idea of nature as spectacle, but also as sanctuary. Early visitors came for mountaineering, guided glacier walks, and time spent immersed in mountain air. Lake Louise is also a starting point for conservation awareness. As part of Banff National Park, it is located within a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for both natural beauty and ecological significance. Few natural landmarks in Canada are as instantly recognizable or as overwhelming as this immense curtain of water plunging into mist. Niagara Falls, located on the border between Ontario and New York State, is one of the most powerful and visited waterfalls in the world, known not just for its scale, but for its symbolic role in Canada's identity and history. The falls are actually a group of three: Horseshoe Falls, the largest and most famous, located mostly on the Canadian side, American Falls, and the narrower Bridal Veil Falls. Together, they form a vast hydrological spectacle where more than 2,800 cubic meters of water flow over the brink every second during peak conditions. Geologically, Niagara Falls is a product of retreating glaciers from the last ice age. As the ice melted, water from the newly formed Great Lakes began carving a path northward, cutting through layers of soft shale and hard dolomite. Over time, the falls migrated upstream, creating the steep Niagara Gorge and depositing sediment throughout the region. European settlers first encountered the falls in the 17th century. By the 19th century, the area had become a site of engineering fascination and touristic wonder. Early daredevils attempted barrel plunges and tightrope walks across the gorge, while developers harnessed the water's power for industrial use. Despite the surrounding infrastructure, the falls remain an arresting sight. Visitors can approach from multiple angles: above, below, beside. Boats take passengers into the spray, while tunnels carved behind Horseshoe Falls offer a literal behind-the-scenes look at its thunderous drop. Surrounded by forested mountains, fast-moving rivers, and a growing urban core, this city blends the energy of the suburbs with the richness of the wilderness. Coquitlam, located in Metro Vancouver's northeastern corridor, is one of British Columbia's fastest-growing communities and one of its most quietly scenic. Modern Coquitlam began to take shape in the early 20th century with the arrival of logging operations, mills, and railway links. The region's dense forests and proximity to water made it a natural center for timber production. Later, residential growth expanded outward from neighboring New Westminster and Port Moody, gradually transforming the area into a suburban extension of Vancouver. Despite this growth, green space remained a priority. Today, Coquitlam is known for its network of parks and natural areas, which help maintain a strong connection between city life and the environment. Minnewanka Regional Park rises into forested hills and provides sweeping views over the Pitt River wetlands. In autumn, migrating birds gather in large flocks, while black bears and deer move through the park's quieter corners. Culturally, Coquitlam reflects the diversity of the region. Its population includes communities from across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, with strong representation from Korean, Iranian, Chinese, and Filipino backgrounds. This multicultural fabric is visible in everything from festivals and schools to bakeries, temples, and community centers. Kelowna, the largest city in British Columbia's Okanagan Valley, is a place where natural abundance meets cultural growth. Set along the eastern shore of Okanagan Lake and surrounded by vineyards, hills, and arid bluffs, this lakeside city blends outdoor living with urban sophistication. The region's dry, sunny climate, among the warmest in Canada, makes it ideal for orchards, wineries, and lake-based recreation. Rolling hills produce award-winning wines, while the lake itself stretches over 130 kilometers, drawing boaters, paddlers, and swimmers each summer. In autumn, grapevines and maple trees color the landscape in reds and golds, while winters bring snow to nearby ski slopes. The name Kelowna comes from the Syilx word for grizzly bear, a reminder that this was once a wild landscape inhabited by powerful animals and shaped by deep cultural connections. The city itself has changed rapidly. What was once a modest agricultural town is now a growing urban center with a population exceeding 140,000. Downtown Kelowna offers a mix of restaurants, breweries, galleries, and lakefront parks. One of Kelowna's defining features is its connection to Okanagan Lake. The waterfront plays a central role in daily life, lined with walking paths, beaches, marinas, and public spaces like Waterfront Park and Stewart Park, which transforms into an outdoor skating rink in winter. Recreation is a major part of life here. Trails wind through pine-scented hills and up to panoramic viewpoints. Cyclists ride through vineyards or follow converted rail lines along the Kettle Valley Rail Trail. Vancouver, located on Canada's Pacific coast in British Columbia, is a place where glass towers reflect snow-capped peaks and forest trails begin just minutes from downtown streets. For thousands of years, indigenous communities lived along these shores, drawing sustenance from the rivers, forests, and ocean. Their presence continues to shape the city's evolving identity through land acknowledgements, cultural centers, and increasing collaboration in urban planning and ecological restoration. Vancouver's modern growth began in the late 19th century as a sawmilling and port town. With the arrival of the Canadian Pacific Railway in 1887, it rapidly expanded into a gateway for trade across the Pacific. Vancouver is among the most ethnically diverse cities in Canada. Over half of its residents identify as visible minorities, and many speak a first language other than English or French. This diversity is reflected in the city's food, festivals, and public life. From the Lunar New Year parades in Chinatown to the Punjabi markets of South Vancouver and the Persian cafes lining West Broadway. With its Greenest City Action Plan, the city aims to lead in sustainable design, renewable energy, and green transportation. Bike lanes thread through nearly every district, and public transit connects the downtown core with outlying neighborhoods, university campuses, and mountain trails. Urban gardens, green rooftops, and zero-emission buildings are increasingly part of the skyline. Set along the winding North Saskatchewan River and framed by one of the largest stretches of urban parkland in North America, this prairie city offers more than its skyline suggests. Edmonton, the capital of Alberta, blends natural space, cultural ambition, and a history shaped by trade, migration, and resilience. The river valley defines the city's landscape and energy. Spanning over 7,000 hectares, the Edmonton River Valley Park System includes a network of trails, forests, and ravines that weave through the city's core. Unlike many urban green spaces, this one feels expansive. Home to coyotes, deer, and over 300 bird species. Cyclists, runners, and skiers share the paths year-round, while families gather in riverfront parks for festivals, fireworks, or quiet afternoons in the sun. Long before Edmonton became a provincial capital, the region was a vital crossroads for Cree, Dean, Blackfoot, Métis, and Nakota Sioux peoples. The river served as a transportation corridor and source of sustenance, while surrounding lands provided medicine, food, and cultural knowledge. In the late 1700s, European fur traders established Fort Edmonton, which became a key Hudson's Bay Company post and the foundation for today's city. The city is also home to North America's largest urban indigenous population, contributing to a growing number of cultural spaces, from powwows and markets to art shows and community gardens. Where the open prairie meets the eastern edge of the Rockies, this city rises with a skyline that reflects both its frontier history and future ambitions. Calgary, the largest city in Alberta, is defined by its dual identity: a modern urban hub built on energy and innovation, and a western outpost with deep roots in ranching, rodeo, and resilience. Located at the confluence of the Bow and Elbow Rivers, Calgary has long served as a meeting place. Indigenous peoples, including the Blackfoot, Tsuut'ina, Stoney Nakoda, and Métis, lived, traded, and hunted on this land for thousands of years. The name Calgary was officially adopted in the late 1800s, after the construction of Fort Calgary, a Northwest Mounted Police outpost designed to bring order to the fur trade frontier. What followed was rapid settlement, rail expansion, and eventually the discovery of oil, a shift that would transform the city into the economic engine of Western Canada. Today, Calgary is a city of nearly 1.4 million people and remains deeply tied to the energy sector. Skyscrapers housing petroleum headquarters tower over a downtown core that has seen major investment in arts, culture, and sustainability. One of Calgary's defining events is the Calgary Stampede, held every July. Dubbed the greatest outdoor show on Earth, it's more than a rodeo. It's a full citywide celebration of Western heritage. For 10 days, downtown transforms with parades, cowboy hats, pancake breakfasts, and exhibitions. Canada's largest city rises beside a vast freshwater lake, its skyline marked by steel towers, green rooftops, and the unmistakable silhouette of the CN Tower. Toronto, located on the northern shore of Lake Ontario, is more than a financial and cultural capital. It's a city built on diversity, layered histories, and global connections. Originally inhabited by the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and other indigenous groups, the area was known as a key portage route linking the Great Lakes to the interior. The name Toronto itself is believed to derive from the Mohawk word Tikaranto, meaning where the trees stand in the water. The land served for centuries as a site of trade, diplomacy, and seasonal movement long before colonial development began. British settlement took root in the late 18th century with the establishment of York, a small military post that would eventually grow into modern-day Toronto. As immigration surged in the 19th and 20th centuries, the city expanded rapidly, becoming a mosaic of neighborhoods built by waves of newcomers from Europe, Asia, the Caribbean, the Middle East, and beyond. Yet for all its urban sophistication, Toronto remains closely connected to its natural setting. Lake Ontario stretches wide along the city's southern edge, offering ferry rides to the Toronto Islands, long waterfront paths, and breezy public beaches. Toronto is the heartbeat of Canada's finance and tech industries. Office towers in the city center house major financial institutions and legal firms, while emerging innovation districts support startups, research ventures, and sustainable technologies. Long and deep, bordered by steep cliffs and spruce-covered hillsides, this glacial lake stretches like a blue ribbon through the eastern edge of Banff National Park. Lake Minnewanka is one of the largest and most accessible lakes in the Canadian Rockies, known for its striking beauty, its submerged past, and its role as a gathering place for generations. At 21 kilometers in length, the lake is fed by mountain streams and snowmelt, with water so clear that it mirrors the surrounding peaks on still days. Despite its calm appearance, it hides a dynamic history, both natural and human. Beneath its surface lie the remains of a once-inhabited village, now underwater due to damming in the early 20th century. Today, it's one of the few places in a Canadian national park where motorized boats are permitted, drawing divers, anglers, and sightseers alike. Several hiking trails begin at the lake's edge, ranging from short walks to multi-day treks into alpine backcountry. One popular route leads to Stewart Canyon, where the river narrows between rocky walls, offering views of fast-flowing water and dense forest. In summer, boat tours glide along the lake, offering visitors a deeper understanding of the lake's geography, ecology, and history. Paddleboards and kayaks dot the surface, while families picnic near the docks or cast fishing lines into the water. In winter, the lake freezes over, drawing snowshoers and photographers eager to capture the stillness of the snow-covered peaks. Island-based and proudly bilingual, this city blends European charm with North American dynamism. Montreal, located at the confluence of the St. Lawrence River and the Ottawa River. Lawrence and Ottawa Rivers in Quebec is Canada's second largest metropolis and a cultural capital where French and English live side by side, shaping a rhythm unlike any other city in the country. The island was originally inhabited by the Haudenosaunee and Algonquin peoples, who fished, farmed, and traded along the waterways for centuries. The name Montreal comes from Mont Royal, the triple-peaked hill at the city's center, named by French explorer Jacques Cartier in 1535. In 1642, French colonists established Ville Marie, a fortified missionary settlement that would grow into a bustling port and economic hub. That layered heritage remains visible today. Cobblestone streets and 18th century facades line the old port, while the rest of the city climbs outward in a dynamic mix of historic neighborhoods, modern infrastructure, and leafy boulevards. Montreal is distinguished by its dual language culture. French is the official language of Quebec, but English is widely spoken, especially in certain neighborhoods. Rather than causing division, this linguistic interplay often creates richness. Street signs, menus, performances, and everyday conversations shift fluidly between the two tongues, reflecting a long history of coexistence, debate, and exchange. The city's winters are long and intense, but residents meet the cold with resilience and adaptation. Heated passageways connect parts of downtown, and winter festivals bring life to frozen parks and icy streets. With stone walls, cobblestone streets, and a fortress perched above a broad river, this city feels more like Europe than anywhere else in North America. Quebec City, the capital of Quebec Province, is a place where French heritage is not just preserved. It thrives in daily life, language, architecture, and atmosphere. Founded in 1608 by Samuel de Champlain, Quebec City is one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements in Canada. Its name comes from the Algonquin word Quebec, meaning where the river narrows, a fitting description for its position along a dramatic bend in the St. Lawrence River. Lawrence River, where steep cliffs meet the water and ships once anchored beneath the high bluffs. The city's most recognizable landmark is Old Quebec, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1985. Enclosed by fortified walls and gates, this historic district is home to 17th and 18th century buildings, public squares, and narrow lanes that seem to have resisted the passage of time. The Chateau Frontenac, a grand hotel built in the late 19th century, dominates the skyline from its position atop Cap Diamant, offering panoramic views of the river and lower town below. The city also carries deep indigenous roots. Long before French colonists arrived, the area was home to Wendat, Abenaki, and Innu peoples, who fished, traded, and moved with the seasons along the river's edge. In recent years, efforts have grown to acknowledge and share this longer history through cultural programs, museum exhibits, and collaborations with First Nations communities across the region. Set at the meeting point of Lake Ontario, the Rideau Canal, and the St. Lawrence River, this city has long served as a gateway to both Canada's past and its inland waterways. Kingston, located in southeastern Ontario, is a city where limestone buildings, historic forts, and quiet harbors speak to a layered legacy of trade, defense, and identity. Often referred to as the Limestone City for its distinctive 19th century architecture, Kingston has played an outsized role in Canadian history despite its modest size. It was the original capital of the United Province of Canada from 1841 to 1844 and remains home to significant military, academic, and cultural institutions. Its location between Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal has made it a crossroads of ideas, people, and movements for centuries. Long before European colonization, the area was inhabited by Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, who used the waterways for fishing, transportation, and trade. The rivers and lakes here provided strategic connections across the continent, and the land still carries indigenous place names and stories. The city has long served as a center for education and federal administration. It hosts major academic institutions with deep historical roots, along with national training colleges and key government offices. Nearby, a former high-security prison, once central to the country's correctional system, now serves as a heritage site, offering public tours that explore the evolution of justice and incarceration in Canada. From coastal rainforests to prairie skies, from quiet alpine lakes to cities shaped by centuries of change, this journey has shown how every corner of Canada tells its own story. We've explored places where nature leads, where history lingers in stone and sky, and where culture thrives in both tradition and reinvention. Along the way, we've walked in the footsteps of generations, crossed landscapes carved by glaciers, and paused in places where silence speaks louder than words. Thanks for traveling with us. We hope this inspires your next adventure.